The Southern Caribbean has become a critical highway in the global drug trade, funneling illegal narcotics to the US and Europe. For years, US agencies observed how cartels like the Sinaloa Cartel and Venezuela's Tren de Aragua adapted their operations. They shifted from land routes to maritime ones, using smaller vessels to move large shipments of drugs. Data from DEA and Coast Guard operations showed a consistent pattern. The Southern Caribbean was no longer just a transit zone. It was a command center for cartel logistics. Every month, tons of narcotics moved through these waters, generating billions of dollars in revenue. This flow fueled violence from Caracas to cities in the US. This intelligence presented an alarming picture. This situation led to a dramatic and decisive escalation. The US government authorized the Pentagon to treat these cartels not as simple criminals, but as global terrorist organizations. This change broke with past practices. By labeling the cartels as terrorist entities, the US government unlocked new legal authorities. This allowed the Pentagon to act with the same operational freedom it uses against overseas terror networks. The designation created a legal bridge between the military and intelligence communities. This meant data from the NSA, satellite reconnaissance, and classified counterterrorism programs could be used for operational planning. It also opened the door to financial warfare and potential precision strikes against high-value targets. The operational shift was clear. What had been a reactive effort to seize drugs became a proactive campaign to dismantle the networks themselves. Inside the Pentagon, the mission was framed as disruption, not just interdiction. Analysts used years of trafficking data and real-time surveillance to build a map of cartel infrastructure, including warehouses and communication nodes. This intelligence allowed US forces to act preemptively and seize momentum, rather than just chasing it. The deployment itself was a display of dominance. Over 4,000 Marines and sailors were positioned across a network of naval assets, including destroyers and amphibious assault ships. P-8 Poseidon surveillance aircraft, normally used for anti-submarine warfare, began sweeping vast areas of the Caribbean. Their sensors were tuned to detect go-fast boats and semi-submersibles. Submarines, running silent below the surface, tracked motherships. This concentrated US military presence is rarely seen outside of active combat zones. The presence was impossible to ignore. What had been a shadow war became a visible statement of American resolve. It was a clear message to both allies and adversaries that the Caribbean was now a priority theater. For the cartels, the psychological impact was immediate. Networks that once operated with confidence now had to second-guess every move. Surveillance aircraft tracked even the smallest vessels. The very act of moving drugs became an exercise in fear. This constant pressure was designed to erode confidence and disrupt operations before a single shot was fired. Intercepted cartel communications began to show a note of unease. This reflected a growing acknowledgement that the rules of the game had changed, and the safe margins they relied on were disappearing. The fear and paranoia spread, driving a wedge between traffickers and the corrupt officials who once protected them. The operational disruption became clearly visible. US naval forces began to rewrite the rules for smugglers. Boats that once slipped through under the cover of darkness were now intercepted mid-route. Every interdiction forced cartels to reroute, to adapt, and to risk exposure. Every change in tactics cost them money, time, and trust. Interdictions of semi-submersibles, once nearly invisible, increased as surveillance assets saturated the region. Seizures spiked in the first months of the deployment, with multi-ton shipments stopped before they reached shore. This show of force was not only aimed at cartels, but also at the regimes that enabled them, particularly the government in Venezuela. By positioning overwhelming force near Venezuelan ports, the US issued a blunt warning. The US had already labeled elements of the Venezuelan regime as criminal actors. Backing this up, with destroyers and Marines, turned diplomatic words into a threat with real capability. This created a regional consensus that reinforces US objectives. Caribbean partners like Trinidad and Tobago welcomed the deployment, seeing it as a stabilizing force and a sign of commitment to shared security. The mission is carried out with precision and discipline. The operation begins with intelligence. Navy ships, Coast Guard cutters, and reconnaissance aircraft use radar, satellite imagery, and human intelligence to detect suspicious movements. When a target is identified, real-time data flows to the Joint Interagency Task Force South Headquarters. Analysts from multiple agencies confirm the intelligence and coordinate the response. The Coast Guard law enforcement detachments, known as leadettes, are the front edge of the operation. They have the authority to board vessels, seize contraband, and make arrests in international waters. The Navy provides the support and reach to make this possible, with ships and advanced radar extending the range of detection. The DEA works behind the scenes, providing intelligence and tracing financial networks. This collaboration turns what could be small, isolated victories into strategic blows against entire criminal organizations. Every interdiction is a carefully planned sequence. The crew is taken into custody, the drugs are secured, and the evidence is documented to a standard that will hold up in court. The intelligence gathered from the seizure, such as communications and navigational data, is used to refine future operations. This creates an endless loop of action and analysis, where each success sharpens the next strike. The cartels are adaptive, changing their routes and using new technologies to evade detection. However, the US and its partners also adapt, using faster ships, better sensors, and advanced analytics to predict smuggling routes. It is a battle fought both in data centers and on the open sea. The results of this model are clear. In recent years, hundreds of tons of drugs have been seized in the Caribbean. These numbers represent not just drugs kept from American streets, but also revenue denied to the cartels. Each interdiction chips away at the myth that these criminal organizations are invincible. For the service members involved, these are high-stress operations in an unforgiving environment. The knowledge that every seized load is a direct blow to the cartels and a measure of protection for communities gives them a sense of purpose. This is a war fought in the shadows of the open sea. It is a war that, because of the integration of intelligence, law enforcement, and military might, continues to tilt in favor of those determined to stop the drug trade. The United States has signaled that the era of reactive enforcement is over. This is a modern campaign to reclaim control of a critical region. It denies criminal networks the freedom they have exploited for too long. The presence of US warships and aircraft now cuts across every horizon, a quiet presence that speaks louder than any declaration. In the end, this is a war built on information, waged with precision, and aimed at dismantling the machinery of a trade that has for too long thrived in the blind spots of policy. Every intercepted shipment is a life saved, and every disrupted corridor is a neighborhood spared. This is proof that even in the vastness of the Caribbean, there is nowhere left for them to hide.